Single Talking in Tones. You're with Laverne on BBC Six Music, and I'm delighted to say I'm with Philip Selway. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Lauren.
Thanks very much for coming to see us. As I said, the new album Weatherhouse has just come out a couple of weeks back. How's the response to it been so far?
It feels good. It's just actually very good to finally get it out there. Yeah. We finished back in February, so...
oh, right, okay. So you've been kind of incubating it for a little while.
Absolutely. I've been sat on it for about 6 months.
Is that something that you're used to, or is that by now? I mean, I guess, working with Radiohead, you're used to having to hang.
Well, there's an immediacy about that stuff, that we can get stuff out there very quickly, but this just felt a very appropriate way of approaching this record.
Okay. And you are here with the man that you made the album with. You're here with Arden.
Absolutely, Arden.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Nice to see you. I'm glad you're on this record, which is so fantastic. Thank you very much for coming to play for us today. You did do a performance which was a little bit different a few days ago, though, on The Tonight Show in the States, where you were performing with Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings.
Well, I was Sharon Jones of the night, actually.
Right, okay. Tell me about that. How did that go?
Got to perform with the Dap Kings. I'd been to see the Daptone Soul Review at Shepherd's Bush Empire back in the summer. Absolutely blown away by it. And so I approached them to see if they'd be able to appear with me on the Tonight Show, and they agreed to it, which I was very surprised about. But it was fantastic. I mean, it's a lot of people to corral. I think there are about 10 people in the band.
Oh, a dectet. Difficult to keep a handle on, isn't it? That many people. So it went well? Is it an experience you want to repeat?
They were fantastic, and I loved the whole experience. I've also got another excellent band, which I play with, so... Maybe we can pull the two together at some point. So
you've got too many bands going on. That's what's happening with you, Philip. You've got a lot of excellent bands to choose from, it sounds like. So listen, you're here and you're going to do a couple of tracks from the album for us. Can you tell me a little bit about the song that we're going to hear first?
So the first song is called It Will End in Tears. It was actually around in demo form for the first album, Familial. I just didn't have an idea of how to approach it and didn't have a complete lyric. And I played it to Arden and Quinta, who we made the record with. And we felt that actually didn't need a huge amount of adornment, in a way. It felt like that it was kind of in the mould of kind of like a Carly Simon song or Carole King song. So we played it straight, and it was good. And then the lyric fell into place as well.
Okay, beautiful. Well,
gave the album title.
We'd love to hear it. Over to you, Philip Selway on Six Music. Such a beautiful song, and it's the new single out on Monday as well. That isn't it? It's going to be released as a single on Monday. It Will End in Tears.
Absolutely, yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So let's talk a bit about the title, since it comes from that song. Why did you decide to call the album Weatherhouse?
Well, when I first started talking about the artwork with the artist, a friend of mine called Ted Dewan, he picked up on that song immediately, and he was really taken with the Weatherhouse image. And actually, it's something that's trying to pull together the whole of the record. I thought it was kind of a nice image, in as much as there kind of lots of different types of weather, emotionally and texturally in there. And so it felt very in keeping with it. And he came up with this marvellous sculpture as well. So the artwork, like on Familial, the artwork actually then determined the title as well.
That's interesting. So, and tell me about the making of it, because as you say, it's this kind of idea, I guess, of its own little microclimate and its own little world in some ways. Tell me about making the album. How and where did you work?
Well, we started at the beginning of last year, of 2013, and we were recording at the Radiohead studio just outside Oxford. We were taking some time off from Radiohead, and just had this kind of clear space in front of me, clear water for a year. So we holed ourselves up there. So it was Arden, myself, and Quinta. And it was pretty much a closed shop. It was lovely. It was just, we had, over the years, we've built up really good collection of gear. So we had all of that to hand. We had a really good desk as well. And it just felt a very it was just a good atmosphere to actually stretch yourself and try new things out. And I felt that actually was going into it, I know working with Arden and Quinta, that felt like a really a good musical dynamic there. It felt there was a lot of potential there. And actually just having that clear time to explore all those possibilities, and although we've not exhausted them yet, I hope. And I had an absolute blast making it. It was a lovely, lovely time recording.
Well, Ardem, you're here, so I'm going to ask you as well, from your perspective. I mean, tell me a little bit about making this album, because I think that you persuaded Philip to play the drums on this album, whereas the last time, with the last record, he didn't on the last solo album. Is that right?
I think mostly I came on board as producer on this and to play instruments on it. And the idea was to start from ground up again and to explore all that we wanted to, and not be associated with anything we'd done before or any records we'd done before, and just start from scratch. And that opened up a whole world to us again. And playing drums is something that Philip does pretty well.
Yes.
So it seemed a shame not to.
I've heard that he does that. Yeah.
Not to explore that. So, and as soon as he got behind the kit, it was just like, well, this is obviously going to be the central part of the record, and it was from my point of view. And a lot of songs we built up from there. Philip already had the songs in place with regards to the chord structures and the shape of them. But with the sound of the tracks, it all came together once we started playing drums and started playing with the drums and the drum sounds. And obviously surrounded by lots of really exciting stuff in a wonderful studio with the luxury of time and a closed shop where you didn't really mind making a bit of a silly mistake here and there, and so you could say, what happens if we put 7 synths on this one bass line, and it sounds a bit rubbish, okay, let's try something else. And it just felt good to do that.
Think Carly Simon. Yeah.
What was really nice was just playing around and seeing what worked, and it just kind of slotted into place really, really nicely.
That's great. Did you know, Philip, when you made Familial, did you kind of think that this would be maybe a one-off project, or was it just something you were trying? Because, it seems that you're kind of thinking this is a really lovely aspect of your music that you've got going on and you want to keep pursuing it.
I think actually coming out of Familial, I was still writing material. And I think it's led by that, really. I got to that point where you kind of hit that critical mass of material and think that could work together as a record. And when we were out touring Familial, Arden was in the band, as was Quinta, and there was just something there which felt could be built on. Mm-hmm. And I think, it was a very steep learning curve for me, making Familial, then going out and playing it live, and I just felt, it just felt like a natural progression there.
What were the biggest lessons then on that learning curve? What were the things that you really had to get your head around?
Smile on stage. Well, I'd say on Familial, the biggest hurdle for me was actually finding a singing voice. Mm-hmm. And then the arrangements kind of got built up around that. Mm-hmm. Also, within Radiohead, I bring drums to that. Within this setup, I kind of have probably a much more central role to it. So it's kind of actually taking all of that on board and everything that entails as well. And then it's also, I think, learning to play with other musicians and finding what is fantastic about that. I mean, in Radiohead, we played exclusively with each other for about a good 2 decades. And then it's good to step out of that whilst, that's still very much there and a very vibrant relationship. But to actually be able to work with Arden and Quinta, you've got this very different musical dialogue going on. And it just brings out different aspects of your own playing, of your own musicality, I think. And
I'm guessing that kind of informs what you then go on to do with the band, because obviously, you're back in the studio with Radiohead at the moment on and off, working on a new record. It's one of those things. I think once you develop a much more pronounced sense of your own
musical voice. And I think that, that's a useful thing to bring back in.
Okay, well, we're delighted to have you here in session. We're going to have more music from both you and Arden very shortly. But for now, Philip Selway, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Lena Lovitch and Lucky Number on BBC Six Music. Don't stop, Philip. You're our guest.
I apologise.
Noodle away. Philip Selway is still with us in the live room. Thank you very much for staying with us. And obviously, Lena Lovitch seemed the inevitable thing to play before we were back with you, hearing more live music. Thank you for staying with us. And tell me a little bit about these gigs that you've got coming up then, because they're not for a while, but we've got the dates. And it's February, right? The next
That's
round of
right.
dates.
I'm doing 4 shows in the UK. I'm playing at Queen Elizabeth Hall here in London.
Excellent.
And then up in Leeds and up in Glasgow, making my return to King Tut's up in
You
Glasgow.
haven't been there for a little
Haven't
while.
been there for a little while, but very fond memories. And then ending up at the Deaf Institute in Manchester.
Fantastic. Is it quite nice to play those more intimate venues, obviously, after having played some fairly big stages with your other project?
Yeah. It's I found with the first record, actually, that the smaller the venue, kind of the better. It was, that record gave itself to a very kind of intimate atmosphere. But this one's going to probably be a bigger sounding show.
Okay, so who's in the show? Adam's nodding there.
Arden.
I'm nodding. Yes.
Yeah, you're going to be there. You're on board.
It'll be a bigger show. We've got a larger band.
Yeah.
I can have drums and other bandy instruments you'd expect, plus more exciting and interesting instruments.
Yeah.
Philip, for making this record and some other projects we've been working on, Philip got a thing called a xylo synth.
Come on, what's that?
Yeah.
What does it do?
It looks like a marimba.
Right.
So it's just got all those kind of like xylophone keys on it, and it's basically just a MIDI controller, and but it looks fantastic.
So what does that
From a
mean then?
shallow
Does that
point
mean
of
that
view.
you hit it and then it goes do-go-do-go-do-go?
Well, you can do whatever you want. But you hit it with sticks.
You hit it
rather
with
than press a
sticks and then it
button.
loops things,
No,
or what?
it does whatever you tell it to. So you can just have a sound go ping when you hit it, or you can trigger a loop, or
I
the next
want a
stage.
xylo.
It's
I
nice
know.
to have something in the studio that actually does what you tell it to as well.
So you're going to be out live. I mean, it was interesting that you said that the artwork with both this album and the last one had such a big influence on the kind of whole and the project as a whole. Are there plans in that direction? To have a kind of, I guess, an aesthetic element to the shows, or
It would be nice to try and work that in somehow. It's because those images, those colours, are kind of very bound up in the music. So it would seem like a natural kind of thing to draw on.
Arden also uttered the phrase "some other projects that we've been working on," and it would be remiss of me if I did not press you to contextualise that and tell us what you can, if anything, about other stuff that you've been doing together.
Well, we had a commission in the summer, so it was a proper collaboration between Arden, Quinta, and myself. From the commission was from Rombe Dance Company. And they've just moved into this brilliant new building down on the South Bank in London, which is, they've got all their dance studios there. And they wanted to have an event there to kind of mark their arrival on the South Bank. And so they were given permission by the Merce Cunningham Trust to do the first kind of restaging or reimagining of his work since he died 5 years ago. So we wrote the music for that, which was brilliant. Actually, it was kind of we weren't able to fall back on any of our usual tricks. It just wouldn't have worked in that context, and so it was fascinating. Just that whole thing of just kind of almost reinventing how you work and. Great, and it just really stretched. Well, it certainly stretched me.
Absolutely, it was one of those limitation breeding creativity situations, and we just got stuck in. And it was an hour-long piece of work in 2 rooms, so we had to come up with enough music to cover both those rooms and for the hour. And we're very proud with the results. And hopefully, we're organising getting it out there so people can hear it at some point.
Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. So there might be a release on that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. What an interesting thing to be asked to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's exciting, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about what you're up to with, the other band, because I was wondering whether the February tour date implied that there was maybe, a kind of thought that the Radiohead album might be finished at some point. Before that, I didn't know, because it seemed quite far ahead since your album's out now.
Well, we've just started, and it's great to be making music again together. There's a real vitality to it at the moment, but the way that we work as a band is that we'll work in these little pockets of time. So we'll work for about 2 or 3 weeks, then take some time away, which actually works really well with the schedule on Weatherhouse as well. So it's time for everything in there.
Gig-wise, any festival dates that you want to tell us about that you've got planned in your future, Philip, either for solo work or perhaps with Radiohead? Just thinking ahead to next summer.
Nothing to tell yet.
The green fields of Somerset seem to be calling to me. I'm just wondering if no. Fine.
Not that I know of.
I had to ask.
Make it happen, Lauren. Make it happen.
Okay. Well, sometimes it just feels like wish fulfillment. Like if you say these things enough, who knows? And tell me a little bit about what the kind of. It was interesting hearing you talk about like developing your own musicality away from Radiohead, and obviously that's something that all of you have been doing.
Yeah.
And how does that kind of impact on the band as a whole? Because I'm really interested in the idea of it just getting broader and broader, and there being more influences and more brought to bear on that relationship, which is such a long one.
Well, I think everybody builds up more skills in what they do, and so they seep back into the whole process. And I think there's the side of it, everything that we do in Radiohead, they're the bits of music that we all agree on. But, there's a whole kind of variety of tastes in the band. And actually, I think having that opportunity to do stuff outside of that context where, might not be something that the others are necessarily into, kind of, so say, get it out of your system, because that kind of demeaning to it. But I think it clears the air for us all, that when we get back in, that actually what we do together is, that feels like exactly the right thing to do. And there aren't any frustrations surrounding that.
It's sort of flexing all your other muscles than the ones that you're kind of required to, or as part of that.
Well, that sounds like hard work.
Well, Philip, it's lovely to have you here with us. We'd love one more song from you. What are you going to play for us? And can you tell us a little bit about the song before we hear it?
Okay. This is the first track on the album. It's called Coming Up for Air. It was actually the first song that we recorded. And just actually from the outset of recording this one, it just felt in a completely different space to Familial. And it actually convinced me that I could maybe bring something to the drumming on the record. And so I think everything kind of grew from that, really.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we'd love to hear it. Philip Selway on Six Music. Take it away. Oh, it's just such a gorgeous song. Thank you so much, Philip Selway and Ardem. Thank you very much for coming to see us today.
Pleasure. Thank you, Lauren.
The album's absolutely beautiful. The best of luck with the two of those dates coming up in February. And, of course, the new single, It Will End in Tears, out on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.